The term sheep has become somewhat controversial in our current social and political climate. It is often used disparagingly to describe those who seem to naively follow whatever their leaders tell them to do, even if what they're being told to do appears to be foolish or harmful or irrational or even wrong. Now, some have pushed back against this criticism by arguing that as Christians, we have been called to be like sheep, so we should simply follow whatever these orders might be. Now, in this video, I'm not going to be talking about any specific cases in which this term might be used, but I believe it will be helpful for us to consider some general principles. Does the Bible say anything that would address this idea? Well, let's consider some thoughts. The Bible uses the term sheep to describe our relationship with the Lord. He is the shepherd and we are the sheep. Notice what Jesus said. I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. I am the good shepherd, and I know my own, and my own know me, even as the Father knows me, and I know the Father, and I lay down my life for the sheep. My sheep hear my voice, and I know them, and they follow me. So clearly we are to be as sheep in our relationship with Christ by meekly following him, the good shepherd, wherever he leads us. But does that mean that we are to act in the same way toward others? Notice what else Jesus said in that same chapter. When he puts forth all his own, he goes ahead of them, and the sheep follow him because they know his voice. A stranger they simply will not follow, but will flee from him because they do not know the voice of strangers. If we are his sheep, that means we are not going to follow anyone in the same manner in which we follow him. That means we're not going to follow any religious leader or teacher who is teaching us to do something that is contrary to his word. John said that if someone does not bring this teaching, referring to the teaching of Christ, we are not to receive him. It also means we will not follow any civil ruler who is compelling us to do something that is contrary to his will. When Peter and the apostles were faced with this conflict, Peter said, we must obey God rather than men. Jesus told his disciples, behold, I send you out as sheep in the midst of wolves. His point was not that, as sheep, they were to follow along wherever the wolves directed them to go. Instead, he was talking about their relationship with him. They were to follow him wherever he directed, even if he was leading them in the midst of wolves. Now, regarding our relationship with civil authorities, since that is often the context in which this term is used today, the Bible does teach us that we are to submit to civil authorities. However, Peter also wrote that we are to do this for the Lord's sake. We do not submit to rulers for their sake. The will of Christ trumps the will of our rulers. He is our shepherd, and we must follow him. Now, another animal analogy that would be helpful to consider in this context is the one that Jesus gave immediately after his description of sending his disciples out as sheep in the midst of wolves. He said, be shrewd as serpents and innocent as doves. Those who are in positions of authority are often opposed to Christ and his people. In fact, when Paul described the enemies in our spiritual battle in Ephesians 6 and verse 12, he included the rulers and the powers that existed as the ones who are opposed to Christ and his people. Therefore, to take the term sheep out of its biblical context and use it to try to justify following every order that comes from civil authorities without questioning them is, at the very least, inaccurate and could be, depending on the situation, reckless and even disobedient to the Lord, who is our true shepherd. So as we face an increasingly dangerous and uncertain world, we are to be wise as serpents and innocent as doves. And as followers of Christ, we are to be sheep to him alone.